like to introduce to you Heidi Shepherd. Heidi Shepherd comes to us with a vast amount of health education, as well as a really good knowledge of the health education framework. And she's going to give us an overview on a closer look at nutrition and physical activity.
It's nice to be here this afternoon. My name's Heidi Shepherd. I am retired, and I spent roughly 35 years in education. I have a clear credential in PE, so I've taught PE, I've taught health, and I also was a science teacher for many, many years. And so it's nice to be here today. We're going to take a look at the content area of nutrition and physical activity, along with the focus of really spending time looking at what's available on the framework, what has developed as far as new lessons. I've hyperlinked everything because I want it to be easy, and I want it to be applicable to your classroom, whether you're in elementary, whether you're in middle school or high school, or whether you're a teacher on special assignment supporting health and supporting CHIA, or whether you're an administrator trying to get it to work with the teachers at your school site. So I know Eloisa already showed this, but let's just take a real close view at where does nutrition and physical activity fall in the health framework, K through 12. It begins in kindergarten, skips grade 1, goes to grade 2, 4, 5, the upper elementary grades, middle school and high school. And then I will be showing you as when we get into the standards guides, how the information increases over time and how it builds from a K-12 perspective. So what does nutrition and physical activity look like these days? And like Eloisa, I am over 30, but I remember the days when I taught health, and we basically looked at the food pyramid, right? It was the beginning and the middle and the end all to nutrition. And kids drew it, we talked about it, we looked at it, but mostly we just kind of gave it out, and we didn't give kids a clear understanding of what kinds of choices do they have. What happens, what they're eating now, how does that relate to as they get older, and how it needs to be a lifelong commitment to what you eat, you are what you eat, and then what does physical activity mean beyond just being in the PE class, or beyond being on the dance team, or possibly being in athletics? How can we engage kids in activities and make them understand that it's more than just going out for the volleyball team or the football team? So the other issue of how it looks different today, we've always talked about proper nutrition and information in the facts about what's in good food, what's in bad food. But how does food relate to your overall growth and development? How does physical activity relate to your overall mental state? We're going to take a look at that as well. And then physical activity is a key component to a healthy lifestyle. There's been lots and lots of information. I know you know that kids today are a little chunkier, a little more dealing with obesity than in days gone by. I would think that with the pandemic, some of us have, including myself, gained a few pounds along the way. There's been activities that we've had to curtail. So when we actually get kids back in the classroom, get kids back into your PE classes, they're going to have to relearn how to enjoy being active and doing more than just sitting in front of a computer. I put a hyperlink here that's really, really great, which I got from the Asynchronous, and it's all about prioritizing children's health during the pandemic. And the great part of this website is the fact that it has all kinds of information, all kinds of facts, all kinds of interactive data, okay? So you can look at obesity rates. It's kind of depressing, but obesity rates of high school students, adults, 2 to 4-year-olds, and then there's also many, many different types of great resources and great articles that can be used as closed reading. And so it's just really a great resource for you to use. So it's definitely right there on the link. The other thing that Eloisa talked a lot about was the asynchronous unit. There was a, and I want to just spend a little bit time. The link is right here on the screen because I'm sure you've been exposed to a lot of online learning platforms. This was developed through LA County Office of Ed along with Orange County Office of Ed. So if you can look at what today's focus was, it was on nutrition, physical activity, mental and emotional health. The nice part of it is it's all broken up into modules. There's 4 different modules here. They start out with very, very clear learning objectives. They have the new health education framework right in front of you where you can download. You don't have to go through all through 1 to get to 2, all through 2 to get to 3. I can click on 3 and we're popping up. So if all you wanted to look at was nutrition and physical activity, you just look at this. If you wanted to look at 4, which was what Eloisa talked about, mental, social, and emotional health, you go to number 4. If it goes down and it gives you a great idea exactly about what it will cover. It does that wonderful graphic again. It talks specifically on what the framework is looking for. So if you're doing curriculum maps, you're trying to develop new content, you're trying to create a collaboration between the biology teacher and the physical education teacher, each of you could sit here and say, okay, this is part of my world. And that's part of your world. How can we work together to make this happen for our kids? The other thing that's so great about it is it talks about mandates and initiatives. It talks about CHIA, California Healthy Youth Act, talks about Healthy Hunger, Free Kids Act. And then it does all these optional deep dives where all you have to do is click and it goes there. So I think this is probably one of the best things they've done to help support teachers who are trying to incorporate the specific content areas into their lesson planning, because it's clear and whoever developed this was keeping teachers in mind. So I like that. So it's right here, just click, okay? And then next time there'll be another asynchronous unit for what we're going to be studying. So there'll be the one for 3 and the one for 4. So those will roll out with our slide presentations. The next thing we look at is what are the key elements for nutrition and for physical activity. And so these are the facts that I gleaned from asynchronous along with the standards. We still have to have kids know facts, and we still have to be able to identify the valid information. But what's new is we analyze influences. Before, when I taught nutrition, we didn't talk about, what are the influences of family, about community, about your school community, in reference to how active you are, what kinds of physical activities you do, or what about the foods you eat? What about the food you eat every day? What about the food you eat during special occasions? How is food part of your family culture? And then making the best decisions about activity and food. We used to just look at calories. We used to just look at, these are the bad things you always avoid. These are the good things you should eat more of. But we didn't really let kids dive deep into their habits and dive deep into what are the ramifications. Practice positive behaviors that impact health. So here's your opportunity to talk a lot and to have kids look at different kinds of physical activity. It's not just what is in PE class. It's not just the elementary PE teacher's responsibility, if you have one, to promote that. We all should be committed to getting kids back and moving after this fairly long break. And all of this belongs in an attitude of lifelong active living. So I wanted to take a look at exploring productivity in reference to physical activity. How does physical activity promote you feeling better? How does it improve cognitive ability? There's a YouTube video by Dr. Mike Evans that I'm going to show that's just about 2.5 minutes long. And then there's another one that's even better that you can watch in your own time that talks about what is the single best thing you can do for your health. So let's take a look at that. Okay.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Evans. Now, I think most of us know that exercise is good for you, which is true. But another big reason to be active that we don't often talk about is productivity. When we begin our day and think we only have so many hours and so much on our to-do list, it seems counterintuitive to fill up part of the day with doing something other than working. Well, the data shows this thinking is wrong. The data shows regular exercise is part of your job. And by exercise, I don't necessarily mean going to the gym for an hour. As little as 10 minutes of activity counts, and you can do it just about anywhere, like getting off the bus to stop early, walking to lunch, having a walking meeting, walking while on the phone, or taking the stairs. Okay, let's dig a little deeper into the science. Let's start with a group that are marked on their achievement every year, our kids. Many recent reviews have shown that increased physical activity improves cognitive performance and academic achievement. Not to mention when we follow kids for other issues that affect productivity, so self-esteem, anxiety, depression levels, sense of social well-being, all of these improve with activity. So just like the kids' grades improve when we drop activity into their day, the same is true for adults. The science shows exercise improves concentration, memory, accelerates learning, enhances creativity, and lowers stress. Let's look at that last one, stress. That's a big roadblock for productivity. Exercise reduces stress in a number of ways. So chemically, exercise reduces the level of the body's stress hormones, such as adrenaline and cortisol. It also stimulates the production of endorphins, chemicals in the brain that reduce pain and elevate mood. We also see behavioral changes. As you increase your fitness and your strength and stamina increase, your self-image can also improve. You'll learn a sense of mastery and control and self-confidence. We call this self-efficacy, our belief in our ability to do things. And this is a critical skill for productivity. Now, this is an emerging area of study, mostly self-report data. So, for example, one study looking at 200 employees of 3 different companies in the southwest of England compared the workers' output on days they exercised versus not. And on days they were more active, they reported managing their time better, being more productive, having better interactions with colleagues, and more satisfaction at the end of the day. Another trial in Sweden, where 2.5 hours of their 40-hour work week were devoted to exercise, showed similar results. Workers reported that they got more done at work, had a greater work capacity, and were sick less often. To summarize, physical activity, even in 10-minute bursts, will not only help you be more productive, it'll also contribute to what the scientists call subjective well-being, kind of their word for happiness. So what's stopping you? It's time to put a smile on your face, get moving, and go be more productive.
I think what you want to think about is how productive have you been in this last year and a half, and what kinds of activities do we need to promote once kids come back in the classroom, because they're not going to be used to sitting that long. We're not going to be used to standing that long. So what kinds of things can we do to get kids moving in a controlled manner? And the other thing is physical activity improves cognitive ability and it reduces stress. So it's that connection with the social mental health that Eloisa talked about. So I gave you some examples on the next slide. I'm not sure if many of you have a chance, but I know in elementary, a lot of elementary teachers use Go Noodle. Go Noodle is an excellent opportunity to bring in just little movement exercises, 5-10 minutes. They can be really, really involved, or they can be relatively quiet. So I just wanted to show the first one. That's a Go Noodle that says, whales breaths create calm. So let's just start this to give you an idea of how it could work in your classroom.
whale breath.
Whales have a lot in common with people. They're very social, they take great care of their children, and they can be really affectionate.
Oh, they have a lot in common with moose, too.
Oh, yeah, Fabio. And they breathe air just like the both of us.
Oh.
So, right now, we're gonna do some whale breaths.
Okey-dokey.
To get your whale breath on, sit down,
Oh, yes, yes.
sit up tall, take a deep breath in, then tilt your head up and put your hands around your mouth to make a blowhole, like a whale. Now, exhale out of the blowhole. Ready? Let's try one. All right, so now get nice and comfortable. Close your eyes or keep them open, whatever feels right to you. And let's do 7 whale breaths.
Okay, so you can see that, let's say kids come in right after lunch. Let's say you have a kids all day in the elementary setting. Let's say you have a block schedule where you have kids for 100 minutes. Throwing in this whale breath and also making the connection to reducing your stress, to calming down, could really be a life skill that I think a lot of kids, as Eloisa talked about, dealing with anxiety. So there's all the gamuts. There's also one where you really get kids up and dancing and feeling crazy if you feel that the urge, that can happen as well. So just putting in little times of activity, showing that physical activity is not only in a physical education class. It's not only if you go to a gym, that it can happen throughout the day if you want to make it happen. Another great website that was in the asynchronous that I think is important to talk about is what we were talking about today. Here's a complete lesson plan that connects physical activity and a child's mental health. And that's something really new, because PE teachers talked about getting kids in shape and working from a purely physical standpoint, where health teachers talked about mental health and how to take care of the self, but we rarely put it together. The nice thing about this website is you can get this entire document in a PDF. For those of you that like it much more succinct and have, you can have it printed out and you can feel it and touch it. And it's a sequence that goes all the way down through each of these items. But I think in a nutshell, let's take a look at the very short video that kind of gives you an idea of what this entire lesson would look for.
5 ways to get moving and feel better. Number 1, start small. You don't need to be lifting hundreds of pounds or run a marathon to feel better. Try a short walk or join a fun class. We're all different, so different things will help us feel better. Number 2, be kind to yourself. If you're doing anything more than you normally would, then that's a step in the right direction. Keep a diary or tell a friend about your achievements. Number 3, everyday things count. Gardening, vacuuming, mopping, those pesky chores are good for your mental health too. Number 4, clear your head. Physical activity often helps you concentrate on something other than unwanted thoughts and worries. Number 5, celebrate your achievements. Give yourself a reward whenever you've done well. These are just a few ideas. Why not add yours?
So the nice thing about this lesson is it can be adapted to almost every grade level. All the materials are here, and it's just more than just having a physical activity. It's making a journal. It's having collaborative conversations that you can have with within your students' activities. They can research different kinds of activities. So I think it's a really, really positive, easy resource that you can utilize in many different content areas that we have and many different teachers that are listening today. Also, examples of movement breaks, that's another good resource for you to take a look at. So now let's just move on to nutrition and take a look at not only is physical activity need to be a lifelong choice, but we need to look at nutrition. And so it's a little bit more of a shift than in the old days when we just did the food pyramid. It focuses on the joy of healthy eating. When you think about eating and when you think about food, oftentimes we're talking about community, we're talking about family, we're talking about social relationships. So it's something to take a look at and to dive into your and provide in your lesson is, eating is more than just a physiological function. You can still continue to have fun and eat, but let's talk about healthy choices. How is our food tied to our identities? One of my favorite things to do all year long is to go over to my dear friend's house and we make homemade tamales. And that's like a total cultural thing with me because I didn't grow up making tamales, but I get to make tamales too. So that's really a ton of fun. And I always associate that with Christmas time, except this year. Don't hyper focus on calories or weight. For those of us that have been around that are over 30, we do remember that whenever we wanted to lose weight, it was just about the calories. It was just what happened on the scale. That's changing a lot. And I think it's okay to tell kids, you know what, if you spend more time looking at healthy eating and healthy lifestyle and less on calories and weight, you're going to see some changes. The other thing that we that was focused in is body image. Through the California Healthy Youth Act, body image is one of the core concepts that we should dive into as teachers. And when you think about young girls and you think about young teenage girls, who are their role models and what do those women look like? Okay. And do they mirror what those women look like? So we need to do, and the same with men, but I think it's more possibly a situation with young women. And just because you're not super skinny or you're not shaped like a hourglass, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your body image, and that you can be healthy, but not fall into looking like you belong on a magazine cover. So I do have a lesson on body image here. That's a connection that I won't go into right now, but it's through the tolerance.org. It's shown that it's for elementary, but really it's quite easily transferable to middle school and high school, which I think is absolutely critical when you think about body image. And it just really takes a look at defining what a healthy lifestyle is and defining how body image works into that healthy lifestyle. So it's definitely worth going back and taking a look at. The other thing that I thought was great and that I got from the asynchronous modules were dietary guidelines at a glance. So that's in there for you. And to me, when I saw this, I liked it because it was really simple, okay? It's not super involved. It has very general kinds of things that students and that teachers can talk about. They can talk about within collaborative conversations. They can do research projects. They can make info commercials, but following a healthy eating pattern across your lifespan. What's your food look like now? How is it going to be when you're in college and you're living in a dorm? What's it going to be like when you're living on your own? What kinds of foods are you going to prepare? Do you even know how to cook? How do you even know what to buy at a store? It talks about nutrient density and amount, which is a new concept for me, and I'll show you an example in just a minute. We still have to always limit our added sugars and our saturated fats and our sodium intake. Shift to healthier food and beverage choices. But the nice thing is it's one clear piece of paper. Then it goes into more involved key recommendations. But this is really great. Instead of the food pyramid, it has these 4 different visuals. And so these are obviously looks like the food pyramid, but they're all equal, which is kind of a nice thing that's a change. it talks about nutrient-dense foods, okay? So yeah, we want to look at vegetables, but let's look at lettuce and celery. We want to look at fruits. Let's look at apples and oranges. Those are dense types of foods. Then it talks about what we should limit. Doesn't say don't eat, it says limit. And then let's talk about replacement, okay? So instead of always buying pizza with the regular pizza crust, what about the pizza with the cauliflower crust? I mean, so kids could brainstorm and they could come up with healthier choices. So I thought that was a really great link. If you really want to know the entire link, it's right here. It's all 144 pages. And if you really prefer the PDF document, it's right here. So all you have to do is click and it's yours. Next, we're going to transition into what resources are available and how do we start looking at designing lessons for either nutrition or looking at physical activity or social emotional learning. So considerations when you're planning lessons. If you start out with the standards, you're going to get a little overwhelmed because it's so comprehensive and it's somewhat abstract. So don't get overwhelmed, create one focus and don't reinvent the wheel. Find out what's already available, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. If you're going to spend time designing lessons, design lessons that can transcend time. Many lessons on nutrition, physical activity aren't going to change from year to year. It's like saying when I taught biology and I had intro biology, we looked at skin of an onion because it always showed mitosis in action. That's not going to change. The onion's not going to change. Mitosis isn't going to change. So there are some lessons that can transcend time. So if you're going to spend time developing them, make sure you can pull them out the following year. And so sometimes you have a lot of prep at the beginning, but then as time goes on, it's much easier. Then make it matter and combine skills that connect several content areas, okay? So having kids write, having kids discuss, having kids research, having kids create, all of those are not just talking about one specific subject area, it's combining all of the content areas so you get more bang for your buck. And I know Eloisa talked about this, but sometimes you say, wow, it's going to take so much time to do that health lesson, and how is it really going to help? Well, obviously kids need to know the essential concepts of health that I'm going to show you in a second and that we talk about and we're diving into, but it's really also a technology kind of lesson because they're accessing and researching and looking at valid information. Get kids involved in your collaborative conversations, your Socratic seminars, okay? Have kids be able to set goals, not just looking at their life right now, but what's their life going to be like in 2, 3, 4 years? How are practicing health enhancing behaviors going to help with their mental health, their physical activity, and reducing their risk of developing long-term diseases? So there's a lot of benefit above and beyond just looking at health standards. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see the bread and butter of what we're going to be looking at as far as what resources are available at your fingertips. Many of you probably have this book, the California Standards for Health Education, Collecting Dust, somewhere on your shelf somewhere, okay? But if you can't find it, it's okay. Just click on the button and take a look. But as Eloisa said, the standards is the what. It's telling you what you need to teach. But it doesn't really give you how to teach it. So that's where the framework is. And they're in the process of putting together the final edits of the framework. So when you go in, it looks a little weird, okay? Eventually, it's going to be a document that looks a lot like the standards book. For right now, it's still in Word form. But what I want to show you is this is the framework for grades 7 and 8, and we're just going to briefly review this, especially if you were here if you weren't here last time. So each grade level, span of grade level, starts out with an introduction, okay, which is great information, background information, gives you all kinds of ideas, and gives you why the state decided to teach what they teach in what grade level. It also talks about the different health standards. For instance, nutrition and activity is in grade 7 and 8, it's in 4 and 5, it's in kindergarten, and it's in grade 2. So when you go to the framework for grade 3, it's not going to be there, okay? The other thing that's even better, it goes on and on and on and on. And, you know, if you suffer from insomnia, I would read it. But the other thing that's great is they dive into classroom examples. So here's a particular classroom example that is a standards-based, project-based lesson that's already here, and you do not have to reinvent. And it gives you the purpose, the standards, what you need, and it talks about how you're going to encourage kids to eat healthy foods and be physically active. So that's the combination of both the standards we took a look at. If you're looking for something smaller and simpler, they also have like daily or couple day lessons that you can take a look at. For instance, this is analyzing influences. What are the internal and external influences of food choices? Talks about healthy food choices and portion sizes. It talks about accessing valid information. So all of these are available for you to use and are already created. So that's really real positive about looking at the framework. The other thing that's really important is to look at the standards guides. And these are a direct link. So, and as you can see there, you have all the standards guides. Now I'm going to look at 7-8 standard guides and then compare it to 9-12. So you have an idea that there's consistency in the standards guides. Here are each of the different standards that the health framework has. And then here is the overall essential health concepts. And so this is for middle school. The nice thing about this is it goes through and it takes all of the information that you saw in the framework. You saw how at the beginning it talked about nutrition and physical activity and that lengthy narrative. Here it is in bullet form, which I think is great. If you're trying to do some curriculum mapping, if you're trying to do some joint lesson planning, you can see that for middle school, these are the bullets for healthy eating. These are the bullets for types of diet, food safety, and physical and fitness activities. So it's very, very clear what you need to focus on. And so this is like your bread and butter of how you're going to start designing your lessons. Then it goes down into the next, growth, development, and sexual health. And so each of the different content areas, as Eloisa talked about today, the mental, emotional, social health, you can see that in middle school, these are the bullets that relate to what skills and what content areas kids need to know about the mental, emotional, and social health. Now, how does that compare as you go up on the scale? If we looked at 9 through 12, we still go back to essential concepts. And then when we get down to nutrition and physical activity, what do you see? You see that there's a lot more emphasis and that the skills that are needed and the information that are needed are more complex than was shown at the middle school. So it's not necessarily, oh, we're going to talk about it here and then we're going to talk about it 2 years later. It's actually a continuum. So the more that health can be considered a continuum from K through 12, the better we're going to have as far as lifelong learners and curbing some health disorders as time goes on and people get older. And it does the same thing. It goes down to each of these. And then if we take a look at mental health, we can see that they talk a lot more about mental health conditions. What are the exact signs of depression, potential suicide, warning signs? It also talks about preventing violence by reporting dangerous situations. The other thing that's important, I think, and I'm going to just to be real clear on why these are so great, is let's take a look at Standard 8 health promotion. Okay, when you look at the Standard 8, in each of these boxes below are the content areas. So you can.
Sorry, Heidi.
Here we go again.
Yeah,
okay.
there. Sorry.
Okay, so you can see that under nutrition and physical activity, you're going to find these 4 lessons in the framework. Okay, so if I want to take a look at promoting health, I can see from a glance that in nutrition and physical activity, there's a lot of emphasis. In injury prevention and safety, there's a lot of emphasis. There's very little to none in mental, emotional, social health. So if I'm teaching a unit on mental, emotional, social health, I'm not necessarily going to be focusing in on health promotion. So the nice thing is they break down each of the content areas individually. And then it helps you take a look if you were planning how to develop your health course or how to do more work on mental, social, emotional health. You can see these activities here. So I think don't dismiss your standards guides because they're really, really great. Next, and almost lastly, what I'm going to talk about is the Orange County Department of Ed put together a process template. This is a standards-based instructional design process. How I see this used is for if you're a teacher on special assignment, or you're supporting your health teachers, if you're an administrator and you're working on your PLCs and you want to design lessons that are going to be comprehensive and project-based, you're going to use this framework. The nice thing is each of these are hyperlinks. So we just talked about the standards, we just talked about the standards guides, we just talked about the framework. If I wanted to select an assessment tool, there's all kinds of assessments that are available in the framework. I just have to click on that. If I want to plan instruction, as we just talked about, I click the standard guides, and if the lesson was on nutrition and physical activity, I would look in those standard guides and be able to zero in on which lessons are available in the framework and what health literacy or standards that they're focusing on. The next thing that's coming, it's not completely here yet, but it's pretty exciting, is the MLA, the Model Learning Activities. High school teachers, there's nothing yet, but they're working furiously on these. But let's take a look at grades 7, 8. And this is a wonderful opportunity to look at a lesson grades 7, 8 that could easily be used in high school that talks about mental, emotional, and social health. It's a lesson that's 18 pages long, and everything you ever needed is here. And I'm not going to go through step by step, but I'm going to flow through it. It gives you the background of what a model learning activity is. It connects it with social emotional learning, universal design learning. It talks about the purpose of the lesson. It demonstrates the steps needed for students to know the signs of depression, suicide risk, potential self-destructive behaviors, and then also how to access valid information. It makes the connections to mental health. It takes a look and shows you the standards. The 2 standards that you're working with is essential health concepts and accessing valid information. And then with it, it gives you teacher background. It gives you direct links, mental health stigma. It gives you all of the teacher resources along with the student worksheets and along with the list of resources that the students would need to dive in and to look at the different signs of depression and suicide. It gives you the rationale for the lesson, the engagement ideas on how to get kids involved. And then it also shows you how to get kids to select mental health topics for research. There's posters that you can use. This is how you model as a teacher, how you would model the skill of having kids find valid information. And then project options that each of your student groups could figure out what they want to do in reference to mental health. It talks about and gives you rubrics for self-assessment for students and how to conduct a gallery walk at the very end as a culminating activity using a friend card, where basically, I'll show you what the friend card looks like so you'll understand. This is all of the resource information. So it's all here. And then here's the friend card. So if you've ever done a gallery walk, kids really get into this. And as long as you keep kids accountable in the gallery walk and then have further discussion, this is a really good tool. And you're looking at kids speaking, researching, having a conversation, and then having a direct product when they walk away. So this is an example of what each of the MLAs will look like. And then if you want to see exactly how you use this basic instructional process template, here's a 17-minute video that is really incredibly deep and meaty. And if you're working with teachers that really need to understand the entire design process, I encourage you to watch this video because I was blown away. And it was really, really good. And then last but not least, here are some resources. And then they do hyperlink to the picture. So you can see how they hyperlink.